Good morning, everyone. My name is John Sears. I'm still the Admin Services Coordinator for Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. And as part of the last of our Office 365 trainings, today we're going to be covering odds and ends, things that maybe on their own don't justify a full half-hour training, but they are important, relevant tools in the Office 365 toolbox, and I just wanted to bring them to your attention, show you case a little bit about what they can do, and talk through them. So we're going to be moving kind of fast, but stick with me and we'll cover each of them in turn. So which things are we covering today? We're going to be covering Microsoft Forms, which we'll probably be spending the most of our time on because I think it's probably the most important of these tools. Microsoft Whiteboard, which is a whiteboard tool like Miro or any of the online whiteboards that you might have used, but this one is an Office 365 version that's not quite as fully featured as some of those online whiteboards, but still a versatile, powerful tool. Bookings, which is really fulfills a unique service and value in the Office 365 suite, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that is. And then finally, Microsoft Stream, which is kind of going through a transition right now, and I'm still trying to get a handle on what it's going to do, so we're just going to cover its basic functionality today. So first, let's talk about Whiteboard. So Whiteboard is Microsoft's Whiteboard. In their traditional naming conventions, they've just kind of named what it is. It makes it really hard to Google. But it has the basic features you expect of a whiteboard-like tool. You can drop in notepads, you can use text, you can drop pictures in here. There are a set number of templates. You can apply reactions to various things. You can provide images. And most importantly, you can have multiple users in here at the same time, and you can actually deploy individual whiteboards to specific uh, meetings. So you can have a whiteboard, bring it to your meeting digitally, and have everyone in it active, moving things around. And you don't have to have everyone go and create a Miro account or go and create these other weird accounts, because as long as you have Office 365, you can access it. So Whiteboard is a tool that everyone has and just. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about bookings. So what is bookings? Bookings is basically a platform for soliciting time. Basically, the way I like to picture it is, imagine you're running a massage parlor and you've got a bunch of masseuses and you want to schedule time for each of those individual masseuses and allow external people to book time for those masseuses who may already have a bunch of time scheduled at various points, different customers coming in. And so you want a service that lets you find the openings that they have that are long enough to fit your needs and make those available. That's what Bookings does. So Bookings allows you to build kind of a staff team. It can be either your team. So I run a team of admins. So if I wanted to put all my admins here so that you could book admin services at times when my team is free, to the point where you can even specify the individuals that you want to work with. Um, when you pick the individuals that you want to work with, um, it will show you the times that they're free. You can specify the types of activities that you want to engage on. Um, and lets you like build those out as like blocks of time that people can request, although people can request things outside of that time if you allow it. And then you can add additional details to provide information. So on the back end, you're building the the services that you provide, the staff that you want to be available, and all of that interacts with your Outlook calendar. So you don't have to create anything extra or do anything extra. It automatically sends you the invitation, books your calendar. And on the external side, people see this very simple process for booking where um, you just go down the line of this is the exercise that I want, this is who I want to work with. You can either choose to enable that or not if you just want to take whoever's free. Um, the date and time that I want to work with them, and then any additional details that will help inform that. And as people use it, it sort of builds its own database of customers. So you can track the things that are coming in, and you can build the front page to kind of function how you like. You can actually kind of customize it. So use cases for it are very specific, and you can actually create multiple front ends. Like you don't just have one bookings page, you could create a whole bunch. So I've got one, for example, that works for if you want to schedule drone flights. You use bookings to basically signal your interest and the day that you're interested in flying. And I have 4 different mission types that you can choose from that have different time commitments so that I know the kind of activity that you're interested in, and it will automatically book my calendar for that time and that place. But if I want to create another one that is oriented around continuous improvement, and maybe I've got a half an hour, introduction to your topic, and then like an hour-long consultant type visit, and 4 hour exercise period where we, do some value stream mapping or something like that. I can build that separately, and then people can access that in that way. And it's really great because it, shows people when I'm free. I can build in a team if I want. If I want my admin team to assist me on some of the low level stuff relating to continuous improvement, I could totally do that. Or if you want project management specifically, I could bring Ellen in and be like, Ellen's the person you want for that, and have it'll link into her calendar. So it's really cool, really powerful, just kind of a niche tool that might not appeal to everybody. So the third of the topics that we're covering today is Microsoft Stream. Microsoft Stream is basically, well, so I mentioned that it's kind of in flux right now. So they're kind of transitioning from Microsoft Stream to like a SharePoint version of Microsoft Stream. The original version of Microsoft Stream, which you can still access, is kind of like a YouTube Lite, but it's only available to internal staff. And that's true mostly of all Microsoft Stream products, is that it's internal only, at least for us in state government. Um, Outside of the network, you can't access it, but if you want to make content available internally and you don't want to create you don't want to create a whole YouTube channel or something, but you just want to host videos and be able to share those videos to internal oriented staff, this is how you do it. It's pretty good at developing its own transcripts. Um, you can manage permissions and access to that video, so it doesn't have to be organization-wide, but you can go up to the organization-wide level. You just can't share it outside the organization. But you can share it internally with individual teams. You can create channels to focus content, although subscribing to channels doesn't really do anything. Uh, Microsoft is pivoting this service, but I wanted to make you aware of it because it's the primary way that we can share videos in state government without going to an external hosting site. So now let's talk about Forms. Forms is uh, extremely, extremely valuable for conducting a wide variety of things in Office 365. So how it functions is basically a distribution platform for quizzes or surveys. It's a really great option for quickly and easily collecting information and replacing what used to be offline forms. So if you are collecting basic information, forms is a really great place to do it. The one hurdle that we've had internally in state government relating to forms is one of the tools does collect attachments, but you can only collect attachments internally. You can't collect attachments externally. But as long as you don't need to do that, forms is really, really great because all you have to do is create your form, and we're going to go ahead and walk through doing that in our exercise. And then you just send a link. It's also really great as a when you're collaborating, so when you're building a form with multiple people, because all you have to do is send out a collaboration link, and anyone with that collaboration link can come in, tweet questions, modify things. There's built-in capabilities for branching. So basically, if you answer a question one way, you might see some questions. If you answer another way, it can go other ways. There are a variety of questions. And we're going to go ahead and walk through those exercises, but I just want to highlight some advanced features of forms. So as you send out your form, you're going to get responses back. By clicking on responses, you can view those results. And there's a whole settings menu which lets you further customize your form, so you can make them anonymous or not anonymous. You've got a lot of options for responses, for in terms of tweaking how they work. And where it's really powerful is if you are collecting internal information or for people that are inside your organization, you don't even have to ask who they are because it automatically knows who you are because you're logged in Office 365. And it can save you a lot of time and effort saying, what's your email address? It's like, you don't need that. It'll just know. Obviously, though, if you anonymize it, you won't get any of that information. Or if you make it available externally, you won't be able to do that. It'll have to be anonymous. But when you review your results, it even does some preliminary analysis and kind of shows you the breakdown of stuff. I've used forms on everything from trying to figure out the best name for the drones to soliciting statewide insights about teleworking to forming a front end for a full-on Office 365 Power Automate system. Forms is one of the best, easiest triggers for a Power Automate script, where form comes in, you can pull the data right out of that Office 365 thing, put it in a SharePoint list. You can do all sorts of things. So forms is really, really good, really, really powerful, and really, really useful. So now let's go ahead and build a form. So it'll start off by showing you all the forms that you maybe have created. I have a lot of these. I've actually removed a lot because there's so many to keep track of, because I use forms so extensively. You can see here when it's capturing the names of the drones. We've used this for a survey for a VCPM project I'm working on, soliciting information about Vermont Health Access. And it can also replace traditional data gathering. So creating a new form is really easy. You just go up to hit new form. It takes a second to load, and then it will bring up a blank form. When you are ready, you can go ahead and give your form a name. So we'll call this test form. You can provide a description. This is for Office 365 training. And we can add new. So there are a bunch of different question types that come up as default. So we've got choice. So basically a radio button list, or you can do a multi-select. Text. So you can do either short text or long text. Rating, which basically allows you to provide you can either do stars or thumbs or whatever you want, and you can rate things on whatever levels you see fit. There is a date selector, so like a date picker kind of thing. You can include a bunch of items and have a ranking system. So that was how we handled the drone naming, is that we had 10 items that you could pick from, and you could basically sort that list however you wanted, where your favorite was at the top, your least favorite was at the bottom. So it allowed us to work through a large number of options. Likert scale, which is basically when you think of the totally disagree to totally agree, and then a bunch of individualized questions, you can implement a Likert. As long as you're distributing internally, at least in the state government client, you can use the upload file to collect additional attachments. I don't really ever use this net promoter score, but it allows you to rate things from 0 to 10. You can see applications for that. And then sometimes it can be really useful to break things into sections. So if your form's running a little long, or there are different categories of the information you're collecting, you can utilize sections. Sections are also really useful when you are building in branching to your form. So with any individual question type, there are multiple options that you can specify. So we'll call this yes, no, and we can add an option really easily and say maybe. You can duplicate the question, you can delete it if we don't like the way it works, you can add an other thing that will let people type in their answer. Right now it's a radio select where you can only select one. If we want to make it multiple answers, all we have to do is toggle that, and you see it changes it from radio buttons to check boxes. You can choose which questions you want to be required and which ones you don't. And then there are additional options here. You can shuffle the questions. You can make it a drop down. So if you've got a whole bunch of options and you don't want the form to be super long, you can change it to a drop down. And these options will change depending on which question type you use. You can add a subtitle. So we could say choose the most relevant. And we can go ahead and add branching. So after say we just want to skip this one and go to question 3, we can go ahead and do that. Go back to the form. When you are happy with what you're doing, you can go ahead and hit preview and it'll show you what the form looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Say no. Something's up with the branching there, but you can see how that part works. You can apply various themes, so you can put any of these default color patterns in here, and it will sort of change how things look. You can also customize the theme with your own uploaded images or with your own customized colors. When your form is all done and you're ready to distribute it, all you have to do is copy this link, send it out. You can shorten it if you want, if people might be expected to type it in. So if you need to include it on a paper mailing or something, you probably want to do this to just grab a shortened link to distribute. You can automatically generate an email. You can have a QR code if you want people. Forms works really well on mobile devices. So using a QR code isn't a bad idea. And you can also develop embedded text to put on a website. Over here, there are collaboration links. So you can really easily click this. It'll generate a link that you can send to anyone and people can collaborate on this form. Or you can share it as a template. If you create a very basic outline and you just need people to provide additional tweaks for their own versions of it, you can do that. I mentioned the settings that we can customize. Forms is really, really powerful. And when we're in Power Automate, it's one of the default triggers that we can use to implement a thing. So if I go ahead and create a new flow, automated cloud flow, you see right at the top when a new response is submitted. it's a really, really great trigger, and it's really easy to pull the data from that form. And so every time somebody completes a form, you can go ahead and pull the data or send an email or do whatever you need to do. And also sharing that collaboration link not only will allow people to get in and modify the form, but it will also allow them to access the responses. So if I go ahead and I create a form and I automatically do, and I send it out and I want other people to look at the responses, they can all come in here and do that. You can view the individual results, and it also generates an Excel spreadsheet that you can open up and review. So you can also just pull that whenever you want. And just so I can show you what some results look like, we can look at the final results from the drone selection. We had narrowed down our choices to these 10 items, and I can go ahead and look at the responses and see that Calvin and Hobbes won. And it even shows me kind of the breakdown in terms of what people chose for each of these. And you see that Xylem and Phloem had the most first choice votes, but based on the scoring and no last choice votes, Calvin and Hobbes came out on top. And you can always open it in Excel and view those responses. Some of the processing of these results out of Excel can be tricky. So you see here, the way it formats these is each of these is separated by a semicolon. If you are doing a multi-select, it can also be really challenging to process those results. I'm seeing some questions. Can you create a list in the answer field? So one thing about forms, if you have a list and you are using a multi-select, you can try and copy and paste your list in there, and it will sometimes, depending on the format, populate the entire list. That's really useful. For example, there are 250-ish Vermont towns, and nobody wants to type in all 250 Vermont towns. But if you have the list, you can just copy and paste it, and you will have a dropdown of all 250 Vermont towns. So you don't have people typing it in and entering 6 different versions of North Hero, N.Hero, N Hero, Hero, and every other iteration of North Hero that shows up in one of those fields without a dropdown. So you can definitely manage lists. Mo chimes in, I've used Forms, Power Automate, SharePoint for grant application management when other options, i.e. ADS projects, would have been cost prohibitive, would have taken too long. It's a great tool. Thanks for the demo. Absolutely. Yeah. Forms is a really great front end. If you don't have the time or capacity to deal with the Agency of Digital Services or whatever your IT organization is, and so we have another tool called A&R Online that has a lot more functionality, but also requires a lot more IT intervention. You see how easy Forms is to put together. Anyone can do it. Everyone has access to it, and everyone can utilize it. And building some Power Automate scripts that work off of that is really, really easy. Elizabeth says, we're also using Forms to SharePoint lists with the Power Automate flow. It's awesome so far. We set up our Automate flow to automatically fill out a list with responses to the form. Took some trial and error. Happy to figure out the flow, but happy to share that learning with others and excited to learn from anyone with more experience. Yeah, that's primarily how I use Forms. Is I use it to collect data, and then I push that data to a SharePoint list, and then using Power Automate, and then typically I'm using Power BI to generate some reporting based off that. So that was all I had to show you today. Are there any, well, just finish with a quick best practices real quick. Consider using bookings if you have any many-to-one scheduling. So if you are expecting an audience of people that you need to be able to schedule time with, or it can also be many to many. So if you've got a team of people that you're open to sharing with. You can use bookings. And just a reminder that Microsoft Stream is available internally only. So if you want to share it outside of the organization, YouTube is still your best bet. Speaking of YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that nonsense, because my YouTube channel is still here. It has all of these Office 365 trainings, as well as a bunch of lean leadership stuff, lean stuff in general, continuous improvement tools, technology. Check it out if you haven't already. All right. With that in mind, any questions, concerns, thoughts? This is the final one of these. I'm thinking about doing oh, absolutely, I could share a link. I am considering doing a deep dive into a couple specific tools that I think could use a little bit more time. And I think there's a huge appetite to learn more about them. So Excel, forms, um, maybe even a walkthrough of that prototypical forms to Power Automate to SharePoint flow that we utilize, because it's a really practical tool and there are a lot of applications for doing stuff like that. All right. Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand, throw something in the chat if you don't want to talk. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been, Melissa, see your hand up.
Yeah, John, I just don't quite understand how you get to the form to begin with. How,
Hmm.
what, I didn't get that. I had a walk-in, unfortunately, at the beginning. I just don't know how you access form to create a
So,
form to begin with.
yeah. So if you are in any of the Office 365 tools, you'll see these 9 dots up in the top left. Or you can go to forms.office.com. But
Okay.
so forms.office.com, or if you click these 9 dots, it should show up here under forms, along with every other one of these tools that we've talked about. We talked about Outlook, we talked about OneDrive, I didn't talk about Word, Excel. I could probably teach a course on PowerPoint if I wanted to. I don't know if there's an appetite for that, though. We talked about OneNote, talked about SharePoint, Teams, Power Automate, Forms, Planner, Stream, Power BI. We didn't talk about Power Apps. That's a little bit more coding heavy than I think traditional audiences have an appetite for, but I'd be happy to learn more about it, to talk more about it if that's something people are interested in. We did mention Viva Insights. We talked about booking. We talked about lists. Poly is another survey tool, but it's a much more narrow slice of functionality. We talked about To-Do, Whiteboard. Visio is available to everyone internally. So it's all here. We've talked about it all. Thank you guys all so much for joining me on this Office 365 journey, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.